In the spring of 1958, a quiet farming community was forever changed when dozens of orphaned boys, aged between 10 and 15, mysteriously vanished without a trace. These young farmhands, sent to work the fields of rural America, were not just laborers. They were children, each with dreams, hopes, and families that had been torn apart by circumstance. Their disappearance sparked fear and confusion among the townsfolk, leaving behind heartbroken relatives and an unsolved mystery that would haunt the area for decades. The years turned to decades, and the case grew colder, a chilling reminder of lives lost and families shattered. Then, in 1998, a group of local farmers was plowing a field when they unearthed something that would reignite the long-dormant investigation: a collection of worn shoes, buried deep beneath the earth. These were no ordinary shoes. They were children's shoes, the kind that left behind tiny imprints in the soil, reminders of the boys who had once walked this land. What had happened to them? Where had they gone? The discovery sent shockwaves through the community, sparking renewed interest in the case and reopening old wounds. Among those still searching for answers was Ellen Hartman, the sister of one of the missing boys, Tommy. Ellen was just 12 years old when Tommy disappeared, leaving a gaping hole in her family and a burden of unanswered questions that she carried into adulthood. As she grew older, the weight of her brother's absence became heavier, and the desire for closure turned into an obsession. The initial hope of finding Tommy alive faded, but her determination to uncover the truth never faltered. As the years passed, Ellen watched as the memories of that fateful spring faded into the background of her small town. The adults who once rallied to search for the boys were now elderly, their voices lost in the mists of time. The young children of that generation grew into adulthood, many unaware of the dark chapter that had unfolded in their own backyard. Ellen struggled to keep her brother's story alive, even as those around her moved on. The discovery of the shoes reignited her fight. She felt a renewed sense of purpose, compelled to dig deeper into the case that had defined her childhood and tormented her family. The response from local authorities was tepid at best. Many believed it was simply a relic of a bygone era, a case better left unsolved. Skepticism hung in the air as Ellen presented her findings, but she was undeterred. The shoes were not just pieces of evidence. They were a call to action, a plea for justice that demanded to be heard. She began to gather information, speaking to those who had lived in the area during the 1950s, and unearthing long-buried secrets that the passage of time had obscured. Ellen quickly learned that the farmhands were not the only ones who had gone missing. Reports from that time revealed a troubling pattern: unexplained disappearances of other young boys from nearby orphanages and farms. Each disappearance echoed the last, creating a chilling narrative that suggested something far more sinister was at play. Ellen faced the daunting task of piecing together a puzzle that seemed impossible to solve. Each lead she pursued was met with resistance, skepticism, and at times outright hostility from those who were reluctant to revisit the past. As Ellen dug deeper into the history of the orphanages, she uncovered a dark truth. The boys had been sent to work in conditions that bordered on slavery. Many were subjected to brutal treatment, exploited for their labor, and left to fend for themselves. This revelation raised alarming questions about the circumstances surrounding their disappearance. Were they simply lost in the vast fields of the Midwest, or had they been taken for reasons far more nefarious? Ellen's investigation led her to a series of interviews with former farmhands and caretakers who had worked in the area during the late 1950s. What she found was a tapestry of fear and silence. Some witnesses were reluctant to speak, while others shared stories of peculiar events that they had witnessed: the arrival of strangers in the night, whispers of dark deeds concealed beneath the surface of everyday life. The more she uncovered, the more she realized that the truth was far from simple. There were whispers of a cover-up, of powerful men who had a vested interest in keeping the past buried. Yet, through it all, Ellen remained steadfast. Her love for her brother and the memory of the other boys pushed her forward. The shoes found in the field were a symbol of hope, a reminder that the boys had once walked this earth and deserved to be remembered. With each new piece of evidence, Ellen drew closer to the truth, though it loomed large and shadowy, threatening to consume her as she navigated the labyrinth of secrets that surrounded their disappearance. As the investigation deepened, Ellen faced the reality that the answers she sought could lead to unexpected and unsettling revelations. The truth about what happened to the orphan farmhands could shake the very foundations of her community. But she pressed on, driven by a determination that had been forged in the fires of loss and longing. Would she be able to confront the dark secrets of her past and bring justice for the boys who had vanished so many years ago? Or would the truth remain forever buried, lost to the whispers of time? The journey had just begun, and Ellen was resolute. The past would not remain silent any longer. The time had come to unearth the buried truths and confront the shadows that had haunted her family for far too long. Ellen dove deeper into her investigation, determined to follow every lead no matter how small. She reached out to former residents of the orphanage, tracking down men and women who had lived in the area during the time of the disappearances. Each conversation was tinged with a blend of nostalgia and fear, as many were hesitant to speak about the boys. There were whispers of a dark underbelly in the community, of shadows that lurked just beneath the surface, but few were willing to go into detail. With each interview, Ellen pieced together fragments of a disturbing narrative. Some spoke of strange happenings on the farm, of odd disappearances even before the boys vanished. Others mentioned sightings of men in cars, watching the orphanage from a distance, their intentions cloaked in secrecy. It became increasingly clear that the boys were not just victims of unfortunate circumstances. They were part of a larger, more sinister story. Ellen decided to visit the field where the shoes had been discovered, hoping to find something more. Standing there, the weight of history pressed heavily on her. She scanned the area, taking note of the surrounding landscape. As she walked, her mind raced with questions. Why had the shoes been buried here? Who had hidden them? And what else lay beneath the surface? It was then that she noticed something unusual in the soil, a glint of metal catching the sunlight. Kneeling down, Ellen unearthed a small, rusted key. It was like a jolt of electricity coursing through her. It felt significant, as if it held the promise of answers yet to come. But to what? And whose key was it? Ellen rushed to the local library, a place where she had spent countless hours researching the orphan farmhands. With the key clutched tightly in her hand, she scoured old records, deeds, and maps, desperate to connect the dots. Hours turned into days as she followed the trail of evidence, her heart racing with each new discovery. Finally, she stumbled across an old property deed that referenced a hidden cellar beneath one of the long-abandoned buildings on the farm. The key could fit there. It had to. But would she find what she was searching for? Or would it lead her into a trap laid long ago? Ellen felt the weight of doubt creeping in. The authorities had dismissed her quest, labeled her a stubborn woman chasing ghosts. But with the key in her possession, she felt emboldened. She would not let their skepticism deter her. As she prepared to explore the cellar, a sense of foreboding washed over her. She knew she was stepping into the unknown, where the truth she sought could be far more harrowing than she could imagine. Yet the thought of leaving the mystery unsolved, of allowing the boys' stories to fade away into obscurity, fueled her resolve. The time had come to face the darkness that had claimed the farmhands. With the key as her guide, she took a deep breath and steeled herself for what lay ahead. Would she unlock the secrets of the past, or would the shadows of the farm swallow her whole? As Ellen approached the dilapidated building, the once vibrant farm now stood eerily silent, a ghost of its former self. The key felt heavy in her pocket, a tangible reminder of the hope it represented and the fears it conjured. Each step toward the entrance was laced with the weight of history, the air thick with the stories of the lost boys. The door creaked open, revealing a darkened interior filled with dust and decay. Ellen flicked on her flashlight, its beam cutting through the gloom like a knife. She scanned the room, searching for any sign of the cellar. Her heart pounded in her chest, echoing in the stillness as she navigated through broken furniture and shattered glass. Finally, her gaze fell upon a trapdoor, half hidden beneath a tattered rug. With trembling hands, she brushed aside the debris and knelt beside it. The lock was rusty but not beyond hope. She retrieved the key, its cold metal glinting in the flashlight's beam, and inserted it into the lock. A soft click echoed, sending a shiver down her spine. Taking a deep breath, She pulled the trapdoor open. It creaked ominously, revealing a narrow staircase leading into darkness. The air grew colder as she descended, the faint scent of damp earth filling her nostrils. With each step, her mind raced with possibilities. What had happened to the boys? What secrets lay buried below? At the bottom of the stairs, Ellen found herself in a small, musty cellar. The beam of her flashlight danced across the walls, illuminating forgotten remnants of a life once lived. Old crates lay scattered around, their contents obscured by layers of dust. But it was a corner of the cellar that drew her attention, a series of deep gouges in the wooden floor, as if something had been dragged across it. Ellen moved closer, her heart racing with a mix of dread and anticipation. She knelt down, brushing away the dust to reveal a small, partially open box. As she lifted the lid, a chill ran through her. Inside lay a collection of personal items, an old watch, a worn-out shoe, and crumpled photographs of the farmhands, faces she had grown to recognize over the years. But one item caught her eye, a small, blood-stained handkerchief, with initials stitched into the fabric. Her stomach twisted as she read the letters, their significance crashing over her like a wave. These were the initials of someone she thought she knew well, someone who had been part of the community for years. Ellen's mind raced. What was their connection to the boys? Why were these items hidden away? As she grappled with the implications, the shadows in the cellar seemed to close in around her. It was clear now. The truth was not as simple as she had hoped. This discovery opened a door to a world of betrayal and deceit that had been lurking beneath the surface for decades. With her pulse quickening, Ellen knew she needed to confront the individual whose initials stained the handkerchief. But what if they had played a role in the disappearances? What if they were part of a darker secret that had kept the community silent for so long? As she made her way back up the stairs, the weight of the cellar's secrets hung heavily on her shoulders. She was no longer just a grieving mother searching for closure. She was an investigator teetering on the edge of a terrifying revelation. The confrontation ahead promised to unravel everything she thought she knew, and with it, the lives of those who had vanished. Ellen stepped into the fading light of day. Her determination rekindled. She would seek the truth, no matter the cost. Ellen felt the chill of dusk settle around her as she drove toward the house of Harold Finn, the man whose initials had been etched into the fabric of her discovery. For years, Harold had been a respected figure in the community, a kind face whose smile belied the shadows lurking in his past. But now Ellen questioned everything she thought she knew about him. She arrived at Harold's home, a modest structure that seemed to stand as a testament to time. The garden, once vibrant, now appeared overgrown and unkempt, mirroring the neglect of the truths buried within. Ellen took a deep breath, steeling herself for the confrontation that lay ahead. She knew she would need to tread carefully. The stakes had risen and the tension in the air was palpable. As she approached the door, memories of her son flooded her mind. The laughter, the dreams, the promise of a future cut short. Each step felt heavier than the last, but Ellen pressed on, fueled by a determination born from years of unanswered questions. She knocked, and the sound echoed like a tolling bell, marking the gravity of the moment. Harold opened the door, surprise flickering across his features. His eyes narrowed as he recognized Ellen. "What brings you here?" he asked, his voice steady but tinged with an underlying tension. "I need to talk to you," Ellen replied, her voice steady despite the chaos swirling inside her. "It's about the boys. The farmhands who vanished." His demeanor shifted, and for a fleeting moment, a shadow crossed his face. "I don't know what you're talking about," he said, attempting to close the door. Ellen pressed her foot against the threshold, refusing to allow him to retreat. "I found something, Harold. Something that connects you to their disappearances. I know you have answers." The weight of her words hung in the air, thick with unspoken fears. Harold's expression hardened, but Ellen saw a flicker of something else. Fear. It was a crack in his facade, a glimpse of the man behind the mask. "I can't help you," he said finally, his voice barely above a whisper. "Some things are better left alone." But Ellen would not back down. "What happened to those boys? You must know something." They deserve justice, and I won't let this go until I find it. With that, the tension reached a breaking point. Harold stepped back, inviting her into the dimly lit hallway. You shouldn't be here, he warned, but Ellen sensed that she was closer to the truth than ever before. As she entered, the door creaked ominously behind her, sealing her in a space that felt both familiar and foreign. Ellen could feel the walls closing in, the air thick with the weight of secrets. She was on the precipice of something monumental, a revelation that could turn everything upside down. Yet as she faced Harold, she realized the confrontation was only the beginning. The answers she sought would not come easily, and the darkness surrounding the case was deeper than she had imagined. What lay beyond this encounter could shatter everything she held dear. Ellen took a deep breath, steeling herself for the depths of truth that lay ahead, knowing that the next moments could change the course of her quest forever. As Ellen stood in the dim light of the hallway, her heart raced, echoing in the silence that enveloped them. Harold's eyes darted nervously, as if the very walls might betray him, spilling secrets long buried. You should leave, he insisted, his voice trembling. You don't know what you're getting into. But Ellen pressed on, her determination unwavering. If you know something, you have to tell me. Those boys deserve to be remembered, to be found. Each word was laced with the weight of years spent seeking answers, years filled with unanswered questions and heartache. Harold hesitated, his gaze shifting to the floor as if seeking solace in the worn boards beneath them. There are things that happened at the farm, he began slowly, things that nobody wanted to talk about. It was a different time, and those boys, they were just expendable. Ellen's stomach churned at the implications of his words. Expendable? What do you mean? What did you see? She leaned in closer, desperate for the truth. There were whispers among the workers, he continued, his voice barely above a whisper. Rumors of something dark, something that went beyond the usual hardships of farm life. People knew, but no one wanted to speak up. Fear kept them quiet. Ellen felt her pulse quicken. Fear. It was a word that echoed through the years, a word that had silenced many. What were they afraid of? She pressed, her voice steady despite the turmoil inside her. People in power, Harold replied, his eyes flickering with a mix of dread and anger. The owners, the overseers, they had their hands in everything. They didn't want any trouble, and trouble was what those boys represented. Ellen's mind raced. Were the boys' disappearances part of a larger scheme? Could there have been more to their vanishing than just neglect or accident? Did you see anything? Did you hear names? She was relentless, fueled by the urgency of her mission. I saw things. I shouldn't have, he stammered. But I can't go on record. It's too dangerous. You don't know who you're dealing with. His voice cracked with the weight of his fear, and Ellen realized that the shadows of the past loomed large over their conversation. Please, she urged. I can't uncover the truth without your help. If you can just give me a name or a detail, I can take it from there. Harold's face twisted with conflict, torn between the instinct to protect himself and the long-suppressed desire to reveal the truth. Just as it seemed he might divulge something crucial, a sudden noise from outside interrupted their tense exchange. Both of them froze, instincts kicking in. Harold's expression shifted from fear to panic. You need to go. Now, he urged, glancing towards the door. They're watching. They don't want this to come out. Ellen felt a cold chill race down her spine. Who was watching? Who held the power to silence the past? But before she could respond, Harold moved quickly, pushing her toward the door. You must leave, before it's too late. Ellen stepped back, her mind racing with possibilities. Was Harold trying to protect her, or was he simply terrified of the consequences of their conversation? But there's no time, he interrupted, his voice urgent. You're in danger now. Just go. With that, Ellen's heart sank. The answers she had sought were slipping away, and the darkness surrounding the case was thickening. As she turned to leave, she felt the weight of the unknown pressing down on her. The truth was closer than ever, yet somehow, it felt more elusive. Stepping outside into the cool air, Ellen was met with an unsettling silence. The world around her felt different, charged with the possibility of danger. She knew she had to regroup, to piece together the fragments of this dark puzzle. The stakes were rising, and as the shadows lengthened, Ellen understood that she had only scratched the surface of a twisted reality. The boys' stories were entwined with a deeper conspiracy, one that threatened to ensnare her as she searched for the truth. Resolute, she made her way back home, knowing that the journey ahead would demand every ounce of her courage. The clock was ticking, and with each passing moment, the shadows of the past grew darker. Ellen was determined to shine a light on the truth, no matter the cost. Ellen returned home, her mind racing with the implications of what she had just learned. The conversation with the boys had unearthed a chilling possibility. The disappearance of her sister was not a simple case of a young woman vanishing without a trace. It was a thread woven into a larger, sinister tapestry. Days turned into restless nights as Ellen scoured the internet for any leads, chasing down every obscure reference and cryptic mention. She revisited old articles, looked through social media posts, and scrutinized police reports, hoping to find a connection that others had overlooked. But the deeper she dug, the more complex the web of deception became. Then, one afternoon, Ellen received an unexpected message from an anonymous account. The message was brief but electrifying. "I know what happened to your sister." Her heart raced as she read the words. Could this be the breakthrough she had been waiting for? Or was it another cruel trick played by the shadows that clung to her sister's memory? Compelled by desperation, Ellen responded, asking for more details. To her surprise, the account replied, offering to meet her at a public location. It was a risk, but the prospect of finally uncovering the truth outweighed her fear. She agreed, setting the meeting for the following day. As she arrived at the cafe, Ellen felt an exhilarating mix of anticipation and dread. She scanned the room, searching for anyone who might be watching her. Moments later, a figure approached her table, a man with a hood pulled low over his face. He sat down and glanced around, ensuring they were not overheard. "I know who took her," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "And it's not who you think." Ellen leaned in, her pulse quickening. "What do you mean?" The man hesitated, looking over his shoulder as if the walls themselves had ears. "Your sister was involved with someone dangerous. They made her disappear because she knew too much." Her mind raced. The implications were staggering. A hidden life? A connection to criminal activity? Suddenly, the pieces began to fit together in a way she had never considered. The boy's vague warnings, the cryptic symbols she had seen in the old photographs, it was all connected to a world of secrets that had been lurking just beneath the surface. "What do you know?" she pressed, her voice trembling with urgency. "Who was she with? What was she involved in?" But before he could answer, the sound of a commotion erupted at the entrance of the cafe. Ellen's heart sank as she recognized the familiar faces of law enforcement officers. The man across from her stiffened, his eyes widening in fear. "Run," he mouthed, his voice now laced with panic. Ellen's instincts kicked in. She bolted from her chair, weaving through tables as chaos erupted around her. The officers were closing in, and she could feel the weight of the truth crashing down on her. In her frantic escape, she couldn't shake the chilling realization. The world she thought she understood was far more dangerous than she had ever imagined. Ellen's quest for answers had led her deeper into a labyrinth of lies and betrayals. And as she fled, one thought consumed her. The real danger was just beginning. What she had uncovered was only the tip of a dark iceberg, one that threatened not only her sister's legacy, but also her own life. The stakes had escalated, and Ellen was now a pawn in a game far larger than she had anticipated. As she made her way through the streets, breathless and shaken, she knew that the truth was out there, but it was buried beneath layers of deception. And if she wanted to uncover it, she would have to confront forces that would stop at nothing to keep the past buried. Ellen was prepared to dive deeper, even if it meant unearthing secrets that some would kill to protect. Ellen found refuge in a small cafe, its dim lighting contrasting sharply with the chaos she had just escaped. She sat in a corner, her mind racing as she replayed the events of the day. The discovery of the buried shoes had been a beacon of hope, but now it felt more like a curse. She understood that she was no longer merely searching for her sister. She was entangled in a web of dark secrets that spanned decades. With trembling hands, she pulled out the crumpled photograph of the Orphan Farmhands, the faces of the missing staring back at her. Ellen knew she needed to gather more information about the farm, the people who had worked there, and anyone who could have seen something in 1958. This was her only lead: the shoes, the photograph, and the whispers that lingered in the town like ghosts. Ellen reached out to former residents of the area, people who had lived there during the time of the disappearances. Many were hesitant to speak, their eyes shadowed with fear. They recounted tales of strange occurrences around the farm, of lights seen flickering in the distance at night, and a pervasive sense of dread that hung over the fields. One elderly woman, her voice trembling, warned Ellen to be careful, stating that some truths were best left buried. Despite the warnings, Ellen pressed on. She dug through old newspaper archives, scouring for any mention of the farm or its workers. Each article revealed more about the poor conditions the children endured, hints of neglect and abuse that hinted at something sinister lurking beneath the surface. But it was the whispers of a shadowy figure, a man who had run the farm, that caught her attention. A man whose name was never spoken in public and whose presence seemed to loom large in the community's collective memory. As Ellen pieced together fragments of the past, she discovered that this man had been known for his ruthless temperament and tight control over the farmhands, perpetuating an atmosphere of fear and obedience. The more she learned, the clearer it became that he was the key to unraveling the mystery behind the disappearances. One evening, armed with her notes and newfound resolve, Ellen decided to confront the man, now a recluse living on the outskirts of town. With each step toward his home, her heart raced. Would he confess? Would he deny everything? Or worse, would he threaten her silence like so many before? As she stood before his door, the weight of her sister's memory pressed heavily on her shoulders. Ellen had come too far to turn back now. She knocked, and the sound echoed in the stillness of the night. The door creaked open slowly, revealing a man whose eyes were as cold as the night air. The confrontation was imminent, but deep down, Ellen knew that the truth, whatever it might be, was waiting just beyond that threshold. With her heart pounding, Ellen stepped over the threshold, crossing into a world she had only imagined in her darkest thoughts. The dimly lit room was cluttered with remnants of a life lived in shadows. Dust motes floated in the air, illuminated by the flickering light of a single bulb. The man's gaze remained fixed on her, his expression unreadable. "What do you want?" he asked, his voice gravelly as if the words had been buried along with his past. Ellen took a deep breath, summoning every ounce of courage she had. "I want to know what happened to the farmhands. I want to know what happened to my sister." A flicker of recognition crossed his face, but it was quickly replaced by an icy detachment. Those boys were trouble. They got what they deserved. Ellen felt a surge of anger, but she pressed on, determined to peel away the layers of his indifference. "You think that justifies their disappearance? They were children. They had families. They mattered." He leaned back, crossing his arms defiantly. "You think you can come here and dig up the past? That was a long time ago. No one cares anymore." But Ellen cared. She could feel her sister's spirit urging her forward. "I care, and I will find out the truth, whether you help me or not." As the tension thickened in the air, Ellen noticed something peculiar. A photograph hanging crookedly on the wall behind him. It depicted a group of young farmhands laughing, carefree. Among them, she recognized her sister's face, a smile that seemed to radiate innocence. "Where did you get this?" she demanded, pointing to the photo. His demeanor shifted ever so slightly, a crack in the facade of his indifference. "It's just a photo, nothing more." But Ellen wasn't convinced. The photo felt like a thread in a much larger tapestry. "You're lying, you know something. Who took this picture? Where were they?" The man's expression darkened, and for the first time, Ellen sensed fear lurking behind his eyes. "You should leave this alone, girl. You don't want to know what you're asking." Ellen's pulse quickened as she realized the stakes of her inquiry. This was no longer just about her sister. This was about a dark secret, a truth that someone was desperate to keep buried. "If you think you can scare me off, you're wrong," she replied, her voice steady. "I'm not leaving until I get answers." A long silence stretched between them, heavy with unspoken threats and unacknowledged pain. Then, he leaned in closer, lowering his voice to a whisper. "You don't know what you're getting into. There are things that go deeper than you can imagine." Ellen felt a chill run down her spine. His warning hung in the air like a noose tightening around her resolve. But with each passing moment, she understood that the confrontation was merely the beginning. As she stepped back, realizing she had reached an impasse, Ellen's mind raced with questions. What deeper truths lay hidden beneath the surface? What would it take to unearth them? Determined to uncover the full story, she left the man's home, her mind reeling. The discoveries she had made were merely the tip of the iceberg. The photograph, the man's fear, the whispers of danger, these were threads she needed to follow. Ellen knew she had to dig deeper. Somewhere in the shadows of that forgotten past lay the answers she sought. But she also understood that the closer she got to the truth, the more perilous her quest would become. As night fell around her, she felt a renewed sense of urgency. Tomorrow, she would reach out to the families of the other farmhands, seeking their stories and any evidence they might have. They deserved to know what had happened, and together they might uncover the hidden history that had haunted them for decades. But she couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching, that the man wouldn't let her pursue the truth without a fight. The darkness had secrets, and Ellen was determined to bring them to light no matter the cost. The next morning, Ellen awoke with a heavy heart, but an unyielding resolve. She knew that reaching out to the families of the other farmhands could either shed light on the disappearances or plunge her deeper into uncertainty. As she dialed the first number, her hands trembled slightly. The voice on the other end belonged to Margaret, the sister of one of the vanished boys. Ellen could hear the weariness in Margaret's voice, a lifetime of unanswered questions etched into her words. They arranged to meet in a small cafe, the kind of place where whispers of the past could be shared over steaming cups of coffee. When Ellen arrived, she found Margaret seated at a table near the window, her fingers nervously tracing the rim of her cup. The two women exchanged greetings, and Ellen quickly got to the heart of the matter. She spoke of her discoveries, the shoes, the photograph, the man who had lived in fear. Margaret listened intently, her eyes widening as Ellen recounted each detail. After a moment of silence, Margaret revealed a chilling truth of her own. "You know, my brother was always talking about strange noises coming from the woods at night," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "He said there were things out there, things that people didn't talk about." Ellen's pulse quickened. This was a lead, a thread that could pull them closer to the truth. "Did he ever say what those things were?" she pressed, her heart racing with the weight of the moment. Margaret shook her head. "No, just that he was scared, and then he was gone." As Ellen continued to speak with Margaret, she began to notice the subtle hints of apprehension in the other woman's demeanor. The fear was palpable, a specter that hovered over their conversation. It became evident that digging into the past was not just about uncovering the truth. It was also about confronting the shadows that had loomed over these families for decades. After their meeting, Ellen felt a sense of urgency to continue her investigation. She reached out to other families, gathering pieces of the puzzle, but with each new voice, the chilling narratives only deepened. The stories all hinted at a darkness that intertwined their loved ones' disappearances, a web that seemed to connect them all to the same sinister secret. Days turned into weeks as Ellen tirelessly pursued leads, each step drawing her closer to the edges of a menacing reality. She discovered that several of the farmhands had been seen together in the weeks leading up to their disappearances, often near the woods that bordered the farm. There were whispers of a secret gathering, a rite of passage among the young men, but no one could reveal its true nature. As she pieced together this fragmented history, Ellen received an unexpected call from a local historian. He had heard about her investigation and wanted to share a chilling account, a story about a secluded group that had operated in the area decades ago. They were rumored to engage in dark rituals, preying on the vulnerable and forsaking the lives of those who crossed their paths. Ellen's heart sank as she listened to the historian recount the tales. The coincidences were too striking. Could it be that the disappearances were not merely tragic accidents but part of something far more sinister? Determined to uncover the truth, Ellen pressed for more information. The historian hesitated, warning her that delving deeper could awaken forces best left undisturbed. But Ellen's resolve only hardened. She could feel the weight of the past pushing her forward, and she was not willing to turn back. As the investigation progressed, Ellen began to sense that someone was indeed watching her, as if the shadows she was trying to unveil were now focusing on her. She received anonymous messages warning her to stop digging, and she often felt eyes on her, a chill running down her spine as she turned to glance over her shoulder. Ellen understood that she was close to a revelation, but the closer she got, the more perilous her path became. She had to tread carefully, for the truth might come with a price she was not yet ready to pay. And yet, she felt a determination swell within her. She was not just seeking answers for herself. She was fighting for the families who had suffered for so long, for the boys who had vanished without a trace. Little did she know, the next step she took would bring her face to face with a truth that would test her resolve like never before. Ellen pressed on, determined to unlock the secrets that had been buried for decades. Armed with her findings, she reached out to former employees of the orphanage, hoping for a glimmer of information. Many were reluctant to speak, their memories clouded by time and fear. But there were a few who seemed ready to share their truths, whispers of a dark undercurrent that ran through the farm. One evening, she met with an elderly man named Frank, who had worked as a groundskeeper during the late 50s. With trembling hands, he recounted the atmosphere at the orphanage, describing it as a place shrouded in shadow. He spoke of strange occurrences, boys disappearing for days only to return silent and withdrawn. When she pressed him for details, his voice dropped to a conspiratorial whisper, warning her that not all the boys left willingly. As Ellen listened, she could feel the weight of his words. Frank hinted at a hidden network, a sinister operation that extended beyond the borders of the orphanage, involving parties unknown who might have had a vested interest in silencing the children. He claimed that some had been spirited away under the guise of being adopted, but others had simply vanished, never to be heard from again. Her heart raced as she probed deeper, but Frank's fear was palpable. The stories he told were laced with caution, warnings of powerful figures who would go to great lengths to protect their secrets. It was clear that someone was still watching, and it wasn't just her imagination. Ellen's next move was bold. She decided to visit the site where the shoes had been found, a desolate stretch of land that seemed to hold its breath. As she stood in the field, the wind rustled through the tall grass, and she felt an unsettling presence, as if the past lingered just beneath the surface. She took a moment to collect herself, her breath forming clouds in the cool air. Determined, she began to dig, unearthing scraps of fabric and remnants that hinted at the lives once lived there. Each item was a testament to the boys who had been lost, and with each discovery, Ellen felt the weight of their stories press heavier on her soul. But it was not long before she realized she was not alone. A figure loomed in the distance, watching her intently. Her heart pounded as adrenaline surged through her veins. She recognized the silhouette. It was a man she had seen in town, often lurking near the old buildings. With dread coiling in her stomach, she gathered her belongings and began to retreat, her mind racing with the implications of being followed. Was this man connected to the operation Frank had described? Was he one of those who had helped to erase the boys from existence? As she hurried away, Ellen felt a renewed urgency. She needed to connect the dots, to gather more information before it was too late. The pieces of the puzzle were falling into place, but the picture they formed was more complex and more dangerous than she had ever imagined. Ellen knew that if she was going to expose the truth, she had to confront this looming threat head-on. The stakes were rising, and soon she would have no choice but to face whatever or whoever had been hiding in the shadows all along. The next step could lead her into the very heart of the darkness surrounding the orphanage, and she was ready to plunge into that abyss, no matter the cost. Ellen spent the next few days piecing together her findings, her mind a whirlwind of thoughts and fears. Each lead she chased down took her deeper into a web of secrecy, that seemed to stretch back decades. She visited the local library, combing through old newspapers and records, desperate for any mention of the orphanage or the boys who had vanished. The more she uncovered, the more questions arose. She discovered that the orphanage, once a beacon of hope, had a darker side. Reports of neglect, whispered rumors of abuse, and accounts of the strange disappearance of other children filled the pages. But what struck her most was a recurring name: Mr. Thompson, the headmaster of the orphanage in 1958. It seemed he had always been at the center of controversy, yet he had managed to evade serious scrutiny. Ellen's heart raced as she sat in the dim library, her fingers trembling over the stack of papers. If Mr. Thompson were still alive, he might hold the key to understanding what had truly happened to the boys. But would he be willing to talk? And could she trust him? The man she had seen lurking near the old buildings might be connected to him, adding yet another layer of danger to her investigation. Determined, Ellen decided to visit the last known address of Mr. Thompson, a modest house on the outskirts of town. As she drove through the winding streets, anxiety twisted in her stomach. Would he be receptive? Or would he dismiss her inquiries as the ramblings of a woman searching for answers too late? Upon arriving at his home, she took a deep breath and knocked on the door. Moments later, it creaked open, revealing a frail, elderly man with piercing eyes that seemed to see right through her. "Can I help you?" he asked, his voice sharp despite his age. Ellen introduced herself, explaining her purpose. She felt the weight of his gaze, a mixture of curiosity and wariness. As she spoke, she observed the flicker of something in his eyes, recognition or perhaps fear. "Those boys," he said slowly, "they were lost to time. Best left forgotten." His words sent a chill down her spine. What did he know? Why was he so adamant about keeping the past buried? Ellen pressed on, her heart racing. "But what happened to them? I need to know." The air grew thick with tension as Mr. Thompson shifted uncomfortably. "You don't understand," he finally said. "Some truths are better left hidden. They lead to darkness." His cryptic warning only fueled Ellen's determination. There was a secret here, one that threatened to unravel everything she believed about the orphanage and the fate of the boys. As she left his home, the weight of his words lingered in her mind, a haunting reminder that she was approaching a precipice from which there might be no return. With each passing hour, the urgency intensified. Ellen sensed that time was running out. She was getting closer to the truth, but with every discovery, the shadows deepened. Someone did not want her to succeed, and she could feel their presence drawing closer. As she pieced together the final fragments, she realized she needed to confront not only Mr. Thompson, but also the man who had been watching her, the figure in the shadows. They were connected, and she could no longer remain in the dark. The confrontation loomed ahead, and with it, the possibility of unraveling a conspiracy that had haunted the town for decades. Ellen steeled herself for what was to come, knowing that the next step would be the most dangerous yet, as she prepared to face the darkness she had been chasing for so long. As Ellen stood before the dilapidated orphanage, the echoes of the past resonated in her heart. She had uncovered the sordid truth behind the disappearances, a shocking web of deceit that spanned years, implicating not just Mr. Thompson, but a network of individuals who had exploited their positions of trust. With courage bolstered by the weight of her convictions, Ellen confronted Mr. Thompson, demanding answers. The man's facade crumbled as he realized the extent of her knowledge. He confessed to his role in a twisted scheme that had involved trafficking the boys under the guise of protection. Each revelation was more horrifying than the last, yet it was the names he reluctantly spoke that sent shivers down Ellen's spine, names of respected community members who had turned a blind eye in exchange for silence. Ellen's persistence did not go unnoticed. Armed with evidence and testimony, she took her findings to the authorities, who could no longer deny the gravity of the allegations. As the investigation reignited, arrests were made, and the once unassailable facade of the orphanage was shattered. The community was forced to grapple with the reality that those they trusted had betrayed them in the most unimaginable ways. In the aftermath, the families of the victims finally found a semblance of closure. While the scars of loss would never fully heal, the truth brought justice to those who had suffered in silence for far too long. Ellen's relentless pursuit of the truth had illuminated the darkness, revealing that even in the depths of despair, hope could prevail. Reflecting on her journey, Ellen understood that justice was not merely a destination, but a complicated path shaped by the unyielding spirit of those who refuse to forget. The ordeal served as a stark reminder of the importance of vigilance, compassion, and the necessity of confronting uncomfortable truths. In a world where shadows often loom large, Ellen's story stands as a testament to resilience. The haunting question remains: how many more secrets lie buried, waiting for someone brave enough to unearth them? As long as there are those willing to seek the truth, perhaps justice will never be out of reach.